All right. All right. Hey, hard to believe it, but yes, we did not go away. We have been back multiple times. However, our producer sucks, and it's me. So, a couple of technical issues. We're not going to get into it. It's just not worth it. But hopefully, this isn't some metaphor for how this season is going to go. Oh boy, it can only go up from here. So, episode 6, we got back in the house. Braza Steve, all bandaged up. Say hello to the people.
Hello, people.
There you go. Stop eating your nachos. That's nice. We got in the corner up top. We got Lucas. Say hello to the people.
Howdy.
Howdy. And then my man Pocket Doc. Say hello.
Hola.
All right, we got them all. So because we've spent so much time talking about so much wonderful in-depth stuff that was never captured, we're gonna be a little bit more efficient tonight. The Giants had their last preseason game last night against the Jets. So we're just going to kind of cover the whole training camp, preseason, and what we saw, what we wish we saw, what we're afraid we're going to see as it goes forward. Who knows? So I'm open to whoever wants to fire the first shot. So anybody want to jump in?
Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to
Yeah,
go
I'll take the reins. I think my general assessment of the preseason, and I hope this isn't a trend, and it's been an evil trend for us the last 10, 15 years, is the injury bug. I just think it's practices, the preseason games, the amount of guys we've had go down. I think depth is already an issue for us, and we haven't even played our first game. I'm
So,
hoping that
remind me, have we lost guys for extended periods?
no, but it's
Right?
injuries that I feel that could be lingering or ongoing, and I hope that they don't push some of these guys to try to thug it out for the season. So a lot of them, or we're getting reports that they could be, it's a day to day, week to week thing, but that's not something you want to hear already. You usually hear that midway through the season or around the bye time, but we're not even into the first game yet, and we're already thin at a couple, spots on offense and defense. So it's
Which
not
one
looking too hot.
which one concerns you the most?
I would have to say our secondary and
A
and
specific
and
person though, or just
just in general depth. I mean, outside of Banks, there was a lot of hopes for Flott,
He's hurt.
McLeod, a lot of those young guys. Even Andrew Phillips, we just drafted, is dealing already with some lingering stuff. So it's scary to think that a position group that was already on the on the fence of one of the worst parts of our defense is already thin. So I have a prediction that we might have to go after. There's a couple veteran corners. One of the names I would hate to say, but he is out there, is a possible reunion with Mr. Eli Apple.
No way. In a million
I
years.
hope that's not the case, but I saw the other day when they were talking about this, and they were talking about the Giants possibly looking for a veteran corner. His name came up on the list. My top of my wish list would be Xavier Howard, because he had a bad season last year, but before that he was all Pro Bowl corner. So they're doing contract stuff with a couple guys, so maybe they go after him. But yeah, that's just my general assessment of the,
All
Did
the preseason.
does Stephon Gilmore meet with the Giants? I know he ended up with the Vikings, but he interviewed with a couple of teams that are in similar situations, the Vikings and Giants.
He didn't make it to us. I think the Vikings got to it pretty quick. They knew that other teams were going to
They
probably try
overpaid
to.
him. Yeah, they overpaid him like 10 a year for.
Yeah. But in their predicament, they're down already a couple corners too. So you got to do what you got to do
one of them
sometimes.
freaking died, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I just forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go to Mr. Positive, Mr. Optimism, Lucas. What things did you see that you liked? What did you like about the preseason?
Our D line, the D line looked pretty good. I'll give. There were some guys, even like last night I was watching Timon Fox and Whitley, I think his last name was. They could be like the fourth or fifth rotational pass rusher if we don't get someone cut days on Tuesday. I expect us to be very active on cut day, like we were in 2022.
So you mean
We
picking
got
up other people's garbage?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's why I said before we started the podcast, the nice Jets Leonard Taylor, the ultimate giant name, would be perfect if he is. And he had 3 sacks, I think, in 3 straight plays last night at one point. So yeah, I'd like to see him in blue. I think.
Yeah, it's sad to me what the preseason has become. It's kind of pointless. Like it seems to me, and you guys can tell me what you think, that what's really become important are these joint practices. Like
Yeah.
that's where the number ones go against each other, and they put in some work. And I wouldn't be surprised if somehow they find a way to further monetize that. Not like they already aren't already doing it, but like no one's going to these preseason games. They're a joke. Like we couldn't sell our tickets this year. We had one game to sell. I listed them for $28. They're $100 a seat. So basically a little over $100 for 4 seats and a $40 parking pass, and didn't budge with one preseason game. So yeah, they're an absolute joke. And I watched last night a little bit because they did have it live on NFL Network, and I happened to catch sack, sack, sack. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. This is terrible. So
Yeah, it was an ugly game last night. I'll
yeah.
never get those 4 hours back of my life that I spent watching that. But
And
yeah, and when they did the joint practice, like all the Jets reporters, like, oh man, like the Jets killed the Giants defense, and then like you see like people went back and like actually like looked at all the film of, I guess some people get all 22, and they're like, the Giants defense looked good. Garrett Wilson might be unguardable though. If you draft him in fantasy, that might be the move this year. But other than that though, like Burns looked good apparently.
okay, well, with Garrett Wilson, I mean, I put the hex on Rodgers last year because I drafted Garrett Wilson last year. So
Mm.
I'll just
You
do it
know,
again, and Rodgers will go down.
we could have had him instead of Evan Neal. That would have been really nice. That would
Uh,
have been pretty nice, you know. Yeah.
so Steve, did you watch any of this mess? What have you
I
caught from preseason?
well, I did, and I mean, preseason in general, I understand the players' desire. Like, I don't want to get beat up for 3 extra games or 4 extra games, and the monetization of the players to such a high level that an injury can cost you a season because of how it balances with the salary cap. And if you lose a big player who's like $30 million a year, you basically said we're hamstrung our team for the season no matter what we do. So I understand the politics of it and the practicality of it, but it ends up just being just a crap product that they're still charging you for, and you don't really get to the momentum for anybody in your team is gone. Even now, even rookie first rounders, they're not even touching the field
Yeah,
after
I
like the
know.
first drive, and they talk about the importance of building chemistry. It's like, well, I hope they're doing that in practice because you're not seeing any type of practical element against people that they don't see every day. Like, I don't understand the marketing of the preseason when it has become completely and totally pointless from any practical perspective. Anybody who played yesterday, the vast majority of them aren't going to be even on the team or practice squad. So, like, who are we watching, or why?
Yeah, yeah. It's and you said something in there too that caught my attention around like momentum. Like, how do you build momentum from that
Yeah,
pile of dung yesterday? Like, there's like have how many offensive touchdowns do we have in the preseason?
I think
Two.
we
only a
got
handful.
you got
Yeah.
What,
30
three
points
maybe?
total. So 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many have we scored touchdowns? Three.
The
Two.
We
Giants have
scored.
30 points total for the year for the
Gray
preseason.
Gray had
had
2
one.
by himself,
Yeah,
Right.
3 touchdowns total.
Singletary
and then we
had
had
And 3
one.
field goals.
Singletary
and
had
Singletary
one.
had one in the Texans game, and that was
That's
it.
it.
I think.
So no
Slayton
passing
got tackled.
touchdowns.
Well, Slayton got tackled with the 1.
Yeah,
Okay.
Take that as you will.
yeah.
It would have been a
But
50
no
yard
passing
touchdown.
touchdowns in the entire preseason. And with quarterback being the biggest problem that they have, or the biggest concern of not knowing how it's going to go, you're a Giants fan watching. You're like, well, I learned absolutely nothing about our passing offense over 3 weeks with a guy who's come back from an ACL injury and a new wide receiver that everybody's talking about, and I didn't get to see any of it.
That, to your point though, and they've been asking Dave all this. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to keep it very vanilla for the
Yeah.
preseason. But the downside of that is you got guys that are in these. The only upside for the preseason games are the guys fighting for the 53. If you're going to be vanilla with these guys, some of these guys can't show the talent that they need to be on
Right.
these rosters. So you're really screwing them in the end. It's horrible to see.
Yeah, and as far as like building chemistry, you're taking guys just like going, okay, we're going to do, adding, subtracting, multiplication, division for 3 weeks, but 2 weeks after that, we're going to ask you to know calculus.
Yeah, exactly.
exactly.
We're going to high level math here real
That's
quick.
why
Yeah.
I learned recently just never, if you like sports gambling, don't bet on week 1 NFL games because you have no idea what it's going
None.
to be. Zero. Just
Yeah.
don't even try.
And I think it's funny the Giants are playing the Vikings because both those teams have a ridiculous number of question marks in reference to them being anything.
Yeah.
It's going to be, I'm going to say there might be under 20 points in that game scored.
I support that. And they both have horrible secondaries. So under 20 points with horrible secondaries just says all kinds of bad things.
There could be 100 points scored. Who knows?
Right.
I am you're talking about points scored and so forth. I'm very curious about our defense, only because we have basically done a 180 on what we're about defensively. You went from, blitz and wink to Bowen and just locking in on the run and relying on your pass rush. And in my lifetime, our best teams are the ones that generate a pass rush up front. So at least I like where this is headed. If we can generate that pass rush up front, your secondary doesn't have to last as long, right? So that's the hope. I don't know that we have any true linebackers that are like from those other eras. I don't know that Antonio Pierce or Harry Carson are walking on the field anytime soon. So that'll be interesting to see who's in the middle, right?
Okereke has the potential. I think he'll be as good
Mhm.
as he was. He didn't miss a defensive snap last year, so I'm hoping that's the same
That's-
case this year.
That's-
Because if he's out, then we're really screwed.
Yeah.
That defense is in shambles.
And I was wrong. We did throw a touchdown pass. Daniel Jones threw a pick six. So there you go.
That's right.
right.
Yeah.
So
To the other team. To
He
the
was
other team.
wide open, too.
he threw a touchdown pass.
Well, but to your point, Frank, we're talking about being able to get the pass rush from the down linemen. Is if you look at both the Cowboys and the Eagles last year, once their linemen started to grow up, people started realizing that they do have lots of holes in their secondary. Those didn't show up until they stopped getting their pass rush. So if the Giants already have a problem with their secondary and the pass rush falters or there's an injury, that could be a big problem really quick.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to pretend to be optimistic still about our O-line. I think it could gel and have potential. We'll see. But the real key, it was interesting, and this came from watching, because we'll transition now into the top 100 players, but listening to my man Tuck talk a bit, and really get into leadership, and especially when you're dealing with these preseason situations where I don't know how these young players handle it well, right? So you've got to have some veterans that know how to speak into these guys, know how to gel. And the problem is the league is so dependent now on young players that it's hard for leaders to develop and stay with your team. They go somewhere else. So I don't know. We're gonna see. All right. Well, three of us will be there in person to watch the next game. So we're gonna have a heck of a report after that one. We'll see if Paco can join us from a cruise ship. That'll be an interesting show. If we can get you to bring your computer and dial in from the cruise ship.
We could do it on the drive home, so three of us will be on camera. I'll make Jeremy drive.
There we go.
That would be epic to do a drive home show, because some of my favorite times, Stevie, you remember this, are when the Giants would play the Eagles back in the day, and we would beat the Eagles, and we would drive past Philadelphia and listen to Philadelphia call-in radio. And it was
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
first game, and they want to get rid of Randall Cunningham. They want to fire the coach. It was so heartwarming. Oh, I miss those days. Those were fun days. So
Don't get many of those nowadays.
No, I know.
No Eagles win reports unless it's end of the season. Doesn't matter.
They are talking about Sirianni being on the hot seat already from the collapse at the end of last year.
Yeah, well, now they have their savior, like that Barkley kid. I hear he's pretty good.
He results in a lot of wins. Trust me, we've seen it from experience.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, he's got an injury. He's got a nagging injury he's dealing with. He's been sitting out practices.
Shocking.
He's been sitting out practices. Yeah.
This is where it's so hard to know how injured they actually are, because they're so cautious these days. So cautious. If a guy has any little thing, it's like hold him out, and you just don't know. You just don't know. All right, well, let's jump into the top 100. We got 50 to 21 to cover. A lot of guys in here, a lot of guys. So, and I'll throw the names out, and it'll be a mix of the old guys and the young guys talking. So, but one of the themes I saw in these were actually what I consider to be lost potential. There's at least four guys in this last group of guys that could have been so much more. And I'm going to go with Shockey, Plax, Rodney Hampton, and OBJ. In the right situation, all four of those guys should be like top 15. They all have
Yeah.
the talent, the potential, and between injuries and what I'll call attitude, it hurt all of them. But I don't know. It was good to see Plax invited in. Just loved what he had to say about his time. But man, I don't know if I get more upset about or more happy about what the Super Bowl was awesome and him catching that pass to win it, and what he did to Al Harris. But the next season, man, we were so damn good. We were so damn good.
And that season, didn't he hold out that summer going in because he wanted more money? Didn't that all go down too? That, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think you're
And
on something
then
there.
he was kind of like, he wasn't having a great season until that one fateful night.
Yep, yep, yep. Yeah, I know. Well, I'm gonna go back at one guy to Landetta. So, Steve, you'd mentioned this earlier, but how many kickers we up to now? Have you kept
I
count?
believe this is 5.
Five.
Landetta is the highest ranked kicker so far. Although he was never team MVP, so I stand by Jennings still being the better punter.
Remember, he's the higher punter, but Pete Gogolak, all-time leading scorer at number 41, another kicker.
That's right.
Is up
Staggering.
there as well. But he's all-time leading scorer. That guy's got to make the list, right? If you're an all-time leading scorer for a team, I mean, you got to give him that. But anyway.
I mean, you transform a Hungarian soccer player into an NFL All-Pro. Put him on the list.
Yeah.
How many Hungarian soccer players are there really?
That's right.
I think that's the only sport they probably play for the most part, not knowing them.
That's right. Yeah, well, and a couple of the older guys that I thought had interesting stories I didn't know was like hearing that Bob Tucker, great tight end, led the league with receptions with 59. Led the league with. There's going to be guys that have 59 6 weeks in.
Oh, for that reason, possibly.
That's a given.
Justin Jefferson might get that in week 1.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
we might see the greatest team of all time.
Yeah, Tucker would have been ranked 57th last year with 59 catches. Now they did play 3 more games than he did, but still a little bit nuts. But we're getting into the next group there. Number 37. Let's talk about him. Odell Beckham. Where does he belong in this list? Is 37 a good number for him?
I don't know. I mean, Gale Sayers made the Hall of Fame in 6 years. As far as his career,
Yeah.
Hall of Fame. So
I think he's in the right spot.
I was like, so OBJ being top 40 for the Giants based on 3 years. I spoke against this previously, but I kind of see it differently now. I've done a little research on, kind of the lightning in a bottle candidates, and he qualifies.
Yeah. What was the stats, Lucas? You said about him in 3 years.
He had. Josh Jefferson broke the catches and yards now, but I think he still holds the touchdowns. He still holds the touchdowns. He had the most catches, yards, and touchdowns by any receiver ever in his first 3 years.
Yep.
Yeah, we were there the first game he played in Atlanta against Atlanta, and he popped off the screen. I was there at the Ravens game where he had a just ridiculous game. Took it over by himself, which for a receiver is special. And then when we get the field passes, and we're going to have them from Minnesota, so we'll try to take some sideline video. All I would do is watch him. Like, he'd go to the back and do his one-handed catches. And then, Steve, what's that drill you watched him do?
He lays on his back, and they throw it like a bullet over his head, and he just reaches up with one hand and catches it back and forth. And for and it's almost like he's thinking of something else while he's doing it. Like
He's got
it
headphones
wasn't
on
like
too.
overly focused. Like what?
Yeah.
Well, hold on, I got to catch this kind of thing. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. I'm going to pivot to another old player that I know my dad loved, Fran Tarkenton. He's number 33, Hall of Famer. What's interesting about him is his career was more with the Vikings, which is, coincidentally Steve's team. So, that he played for both is kind of interesting. But there's a story I know about him that from his Georgia days that I'll tell you about the man. And what's so funny is he's just such a slightly built guy. Like if he walked by, like he wasn't as short as Doug Flutie, but not too much taller. But he was Flutie before Flutie. Like he's just this little guy that had a cannon for an arm and just a heart of steel. When he's at Georgia, he's like fourth on the depth chart as a freshman, and they're playing in a big SEC game, and they can't move the ball, and the ball changes hands, and Georgia's offense goes out in the field. The quarterback's not paying attention; he doesn't go out, and Tarkington notices it, and he runs out on the frickin' field. Coach doesn't tell him to go out there; he just does it on his own. I mean, the stones to do that as a freshman. I mean, that's just crazy. And he drives him for a touchdown. The only touchdown they scored in the game. And the coach was just so mad and so egotistical, he wouldn't play him the rest of the game. But of course, he became a legend. So I thought that was a crazy, crazy, phenomenal story about him. Let's talk a little OC. I mean, gotta love OC. What's your best memory of OC there, Lucas?
Oh, definitely that 49ers game that we were at, where he ended the game. He sacked Dilfer and took it to the house himself. The sack, the fumble, the scoop, and the score. Called out the grand slam right there.
Absolutely.
I didn't actually realize this, and I think this is a funny stat. 'Cause I'm looking at the little bio here. It says he had 5.5 sacks in his 10 postseason games, tying him with Tuck for fourth on that franchise list. I think Tuck only had sacks in the Super Bowls,
I think you're right.
which is also crazy.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I don't think he had a sack in it before.
Yeah. When you think about that first Super Bowl with knowing you had Strahan, Tuck, and OC is just like it gets more special the further I get away from it. Um, OC, he just was so athletic, and but also such a positive guy. Every time you saw him interviewed, he just had a big smile. Yeah, again, I think that's part of that cohesion. Those guys just love playing with each other, and you could tell. You could tell. So, you got any OC memories there, Paco?
Just like I don't know, it was odd seeing his build he was
Yeah.
very one of one, very
What
like
were
long, lanky. He
what were the
wears the
pads
punter
he wore?
pads.
The punter
He
pads.
wears punter pads. He will wear double-sided tape so the jersey would stick to him, so he could avoid any type of holding. Like he was just very slippery, like just the length, and
Now, do you know what college he went to?
he was
Troy. He was Troy
Yeah,
because
That's
he and
right. But you
DeMarcus
know who
Ware.
his teammate
He and
was?
DeMarcus
Yeah.
Ware.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Marcus
DeMarcus
Ware. Think about that.
That's
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Troy had Marcus Ware and OC Ventura.
Didn't Ware just get into the
Yeah,
Hall?
I think he's
So he
okay.
within the last couple of years.
I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
like 200 sacks between the two of them in the NFL. Yeah,
That's
on
insane,
a random Troy defensive line. Yeah.
Like, they should have monuments to those two at Troy State, right? I mean,
What's that conference has some Hall of Famers too. You got to think.
This is
Marshall
crazy.
Falk played at San Diego State. Like
Right,
just
right.
the small schools in that conference, the Troys, yeah.
Well, what I always wonder is when because sometimes you go back and you look at a guy's story and you find out how it happened. Like Moss is a great example. Like Moss got into Florida State, got into Notre Dame, Randy Moss, got kicked out, and Holtz sent him to Bobby Bowden, who let him into Florida State, got kicked out of there, and he ended up at Marshall. So, I mean, the guy had ridiculous talent. He just
And
couldn't get out of his
it
own
could
way.
be argued that he got Pennington into the NFL.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I mean,
think he ended up at
Pennington was a decent
Cardinals.
quarterback. Don't get me wrong; he didn't have a cannon for arm, but he could play the position well. But without Moss, he doesn't get noticed.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to throw it back to one guy, Joe Morris, just real quickly because he was special. What was amazing about him was he was the perfect guy behind that line because you could not see him. I mean, he was
No.
like 5'6", 5'7", and a bowling ball. I remember those back-to-back 181-yard games that he had, which is just a crazy number to have back-to-back. But he was special. And what's funny about him was it was Dad, of course, Steve, that pointed out to me that he still worked for the NFL. He'd go, "You see that guy over there with the notepad writing down notes? That's Joe Morris. He's the uniform police. He basically the guy that finds guys for their socks going
The
down,
socks being
their
down.
jerseys getting untucked. There, that's Joe Morris's job. How funny is that?
Rogue cleats.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had a funny little exercise with the 21 through 50 of playing a game called Accountant or Football Player based on the names.
Okay, go ahead.
You've got Arnie Weinmeister, accountant or football player.
Yes. Yes. Benny
go.
Friedman.
Yes, Benny Friedman, Alex Webster, Dick Lynch, Bob Tucker.
Yeah.
Used cars or football.
Well,
Yeah.
Friedman was a fascinating story to know that he was like the man where Mara bought the team because of him, because he wanted that talent.
Right.
Like Tim Mara was playing fantasy football with real people back when he bought the team in 1925. Like that's just crazy.
And I know, hanging out with Dad for 30 years of Giants games, 40 years of Giants games, I've never heard of Arnie Weinmeister or Del Schaffner. Never heard of him.
I kind of remember the name of Schaffner. I could be mixing it up with somebody else. So, but certainly Dick Lynch, but more because of the radio, right?
But Arnie Weinmeister played when Dad was a kid, so it's not like Dad would have possibly even seen him play. And I've never heard of him.
No, me neither. But then there's like guys like Homer Jones. You certainly heard of.
Yeah. And Kakavich.
Did you catch his stat?
No.
The Homer Jones stat? So for anyone with 200 receptions or more in his career, he still has the most yards per catch at 22.
Wow.
22.
Third long.
Giant. Like how long? How many teams would you guys have guessed before the Giants if I told you name the team of the guy that averages the most yards per catch in history? You guys, we'd have sat here all night.
In 1967, this guy had 49 catches, 1,200 yards for a 24.7 average. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And 13 touchdowns.
That's where the circus music came from after the yards after the catch.
That's unbelievable.
For sure. Yeah. Anyway, crazy.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Justin a little bit. Again, he's one of my he's one of my all-time favorites. And I think I've shared this story with you guys, but I don't think I shared it on the show, at least not one that was recorded, where how he got into Notre Dame. So because he's from Alabama actually, and playing some small school in Alabama, and a Notre Dame recruiter sent down there to some town to go watch another player, not Justin Tuck, and he goes to the wrong school. And he watches this game where this other kid isn't even in, and he sees this guy flying around the field, and he gets a scholarship to Notre Dame. So, fascinating story. But just
play
who's
going to watch? You play like you never knew he was going to watch it, right?
That's right.
Never know.
That's right. Yeah, and he, you know what? To me, it wouldn't have upset me at all if he was MVP of 42, because he was all over the field that night. I mean, he was all over the field. So anyway, but the most important thing about Justin Tuck is he made Lucas jealous of me, because we had field passes, and I took an awesome picture of Justin Tuck kneeling down in prayer in the end zone, and I tweeted it at him, and he responded. I got retweeted by Justin Tuck. So, I didn't realize how special it was, but apparently it raised my status with my son. So, have you outdone that since then? Is somebody bigger than Justin Tuck and followers retweeted you or responded you, or am I still? Do I still
I don't know.
I had Landon Collins a couple times.
Yeah, Drew got Landon.
Nice.
Drew got a popular comedian nowadays to retweet.
Yeah, I get him now. I get him now and then, but I think the coolest one was Landon Collins was the pretty cool one.
Yeah. Well, the other thing Justin talked about was a game you and I were at, Lucas, the Patriots game, the 16-0 game. in your memory of being there, have you ever heard the stadium more intense than that night?
I mean, the playoff game against the Falcons was the only one that
Yeah.
might be above it.
Okay.
I don't know. I always remember like walking in the stadium. I was like, my hair was standing up straight like that. Like they could just feel the electricity in the
Yeah.
stadium there. But like 16-0 was special. But we also in the back of our heads kind of knew like we weren't gonna win.
Yeah. Well, we kept waiting for them to
Yeah.
make the big play, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but what was fascinating about that one too is so many Patriots fans. So it wasn't like, to your point, the Falcons game was as loud as you've ever heard it for the Giants. I'm sure
Yeah.
Steve, that NFC Championship game, but both of the ones you've been to two. You're one up on me. You've been to two and the Super Bowl, so I bow to your greater experience. Those are off the charts. This was contentious. Like the Patriots
Yeah.
fans, like we had a guy. This is back in the old stadium. We're in the third row, and there was this New England jackass who bought front row seats, and he had a six. Was it a 19-0 hat?
It was 16-0.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
it was
16.
16-0 beanies.
On the back of it, it was facing us the entire time. And some of the old guards, some of Dad's old guys were there, and I mean, it almost threw down. Like it got nasty. And we brought my friend Brendan, who's a lifelong Patriots fan, who couldn't have been more gracious to be there. I mean, Brendan's just a terrific guy. But what I remember most about when we won 42, when things settled down for me that night, I thought, where is that jackass right now? What is he doing? Because I know he's not celebrating 19-0. So yeah,
He was like burning the beanie.
that's right.
I was getting the pictures of the children in Africa open up the packages with the Patriots gear.
19-0.
The 17, whatever it was, 19-0. The kids in Africa were in the.
That's right.
Still to this day, they think the Patriots did it.
Those are the best. Those are the best. Yeah, that's too funny. I totally forgot about that. That they sent those shirts to Africa. How kind. How kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a special night, and we got to see, at least at that time. Well, it's still the receiver record for touchdowns, but the Brady throw the 50 to Moss.
That was in our because I watched they talked about that in the Man in the Arena thing about that game.
Yeah.
And Randy beat Jabril Wilson the first time. They didn't even go back to the huddle. They just ran the same exact play.
Yeah.
Just did it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't even have to huddle up. It was just run it again.
Nope. Just go ahead. Well, and in the Super Bowl even, the desperation passes, they were too close, man. I mean, Randy was out there.
Yeah.
He was hauling. And, Webster was holding on for dear life to catch up to him. And, luckily Brady can't throw it 75 yards. He can only throw it 70 yards. But, man.
Crazy.
Can you only imagine? So, anyway. Any other players on the list that you guys that we didn't touch on want to point out or chat about? Nobody
Just anxious to see who's in this top 20.
Yeah, I know. Well, here's an observation I made too about Brad Van Pelt. So, again, another probably the start of the linebacker lineage that led into Taylor, right? Because he was a little before Carson. Then there was Carson, then Taylor, then bang. It just goes on and on and on. But first of all, the guy played 3 college sports at Michigan State, a Big Ten school: football, baseball, and basketball. How is that possible? How is that possible? That's
especially with the overlap.
Man.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But with him on the list, what it tells me is you've got, I can name 4 more linebackers that'll be in the top 20. So, can you name all 4 of them? 3
Carson Banks,
Carson Banks,
Taylor,
and
You got to go back for the other one.
blanking. Oh,
Put it this way. Jim Brown once said, this guy got famous by...
no, I know. Sam Huff. Sam Huff. Yeah.
He was the one guy that could slow down Jim Brown. So that's saying something. But Sam Huff, what's funny about him was he became a Redskin and it was on their broadcast. And you listened to him, right, Steve?
Oh yeah.
Sonny, Frank, and Sam, where Jurgensen and Huff would just get hammered. Like as the game went on, they just got funnier and funnier.
And their
'Cause they-
accents would get thicker and thicker.
they would get so drunk.
Oh yeah.
So especially when the Skins were losing, it was just hysterical. So I love listening to other teams' radio when they're losing. Eagles and Merrill Reese and the
Reese is a good one.
Redskins in the Sonny and Sam days. So
The Cowboy ones are fun. You ever listened to the Cowboy ones before? They're pretty funny. They're very critical of Jerry. It's actually pretty funny.
I'm surprised they get away with it. So I give Jerry credit because one of the reasons I stopped being an Orioles fan is back when Angelos took over, and my favorite announcer of all time, John Miller, who was amazing, was speaking truth about the team and how bad they were, and they cut him loose because they didn't want him saying bad stuff. I'm like,
Not
speaking
anymore.
truth. I know.
Not anymore. We made it. We made it through to the end of the tunnel.
That's right. That's right. No more Angelos. Isn't it interesting? No more Angelos and no more what's his futz with the Skins? Everyone forgot his name.
Snyder.
Snyder, yeah.
No more Snyder.
I don't know. I like that. I liked having Snyder around.
Me too.
Yeah,
That's
the Snyder era was my favorite.
This is my favorite Redskins era, man.
That's right. That's right. He got all the things he deserved, Snyder. So anyway. All right, well, gentlemen, we're going to wrap this one up. Always great to see you guys. We will pick this up again. We're going to do our predictions for the season next week, and if we get organized enough, I'd like to pay tribute to the man and talk about Pop and kind of give a little bit of that story, since we're unfortunately tomorrow, rest in peace, is the anniversary of his passing. So I don't know if you guys remember that date. Not one of my favorite dates, but there's a pretty good story behind it that we'll share. Anyway, love you guys. Have a good night.
Peace.
See you soon.